Oh, no, 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 no. No voice for you. So we look at this claim, right? And we start to dig a little bit deeper about what a fake Aboriginal is and why all this activism goes on in the first place. And we've seen Sky News poke a little bit of fun at Lydia's heritage. But on the screen right now, you see a little bit of our heritage. And that's an Australian green cap from the cricket team that hasn't changed in all its years of being the green cap that it is. A revered cap to hold by most cricketers. And oh, lo and behold, look at our coat of arms on our cricket team's head. So our head hasn't left anywhere. It is still there playing on the field. So we start by having a look at a little bit of some of Lydia's heritage.
Since she's been running for a politician, that she's more kind of turned racist. She's never ever mentioned anything about me in all her speeches or anything like that. Never mentioned anything about a white father, which sometimes disappoints me a bit, because I know when she was younger and little, she was never like that.
And this brings into question fraud, deceit, undermining the public trust, and undermining the line of authority in the Constitution its very self. And when we start to look at the deeper consequences of this, we start to realise as a people that we have actually been asleep to what we're going to leave our children. And it's now time to awaken to this fact that we are watching communists within our very own constitution try and manipulate it out of our own heritage, at the expense of cultural heritage that existed on the land next to us. And this is at the hand of foreign curial powers that have manipulated you and your country and kept you in real bonded slavery for quite some time. This is evident by the international war crimes that have been documented on the New South Wales Supreme Court record.
Joining me now is Roger Karge from darkemuexposed.org. Roger Karge, thank you so much for joining me. To start with, what did you and your researchers do in researching Gordon Reid's family tree? Why have you been fairly confident you couldn't find evidence that he does have an Aboriginal ancestor?
So now we get to this crux point where we start to realise that some sort of actual line to a claim needs to exist for you to legally, within a courtroom, stand to that claim. Now, to claim that one would be King of Australia is not a self-appointed claim like other people that are mentioned in previous articles. This is something that has been addressed and recorded on the Supreme Court record under the hand of Kiskanen versus New South Wales 2021 and the consecration of a flag by people across this continent. And this is directly reflected as a line of authority or lineage in the matter that involves forefathers and ancestors to be able to make any technical legal claims over any legal documents, which is why both Liberal and Labor are scrambling to try and change your document so that they can excuse themselves from serious, heinous international criminal offences committed not only in Australia on Australian soil, but internationally on battlefields like Afghanistan, Syria, and now in the Ukraine. They have been caught out at it, and they are facing some serious repercussions given that this has already been put on the court record. And now we watch this whole entire farce trying to undermine the Constitution with the voice without any of these politicians realising the very serious legal quandary they have already found themselves in by announcing a date but no actual change to a document which doesn't belong to any of them. And I'll repeat that, doesn't belong to any of them. This is an administrative power administering what belongs to the Australian Imperial Crown and have defrauded that administration, therefore committing serious criminal offences, leaving this as a rogue situation wherein rogue players believe they can continue to undermine something which at law has already been defined to be outside of their technical power as naked owners to change. We're the naked owners as the Australian Imperial Crown of our said document, at which foreign curial powers did administer under Hague Conventions, and those foreign curial powers did go outside of the rule of law at which they were to uphold and administer. This is very, very clear. And what we're going to get into here is all about lineage and ancestry and real proof, like Kiskonan versus New South Wales 2021, that you have a lineage right to a specific legal document and foundation at law. And we can go even further here into the blessing, a reliance on the blessing of Almighty God that might establish some sort of self-determination in the first place, that these Aborigine, like Lydia and this First Nations activist group, are party to.
Well, Andrew, the way we do this work is we get phone calls and emails from Aboriginal people. So I've got quite a few Wiradjuri friends, and they say, Roger, look, there's something doesn't look right here. So then we go and sort of look at the family. So we don't just do it randomly. We only do it because Aboriginal people that we know ask us. So with this one, we've got really good techniques now, really good AI and really good computer stuff that in the past it used to take months to do a family tree. Now we can do them in days, sometimes hours, just depending on how complicated they are.
So you can see straight off the bat what we're talking about here. Lineage and some sort of proof of lineage. And you know that as genealogy. And we have a lot of genealogy societies around the world. But all of their work is based on something very particular. And that is either a church record or a state record. So we can see that a lineage is defined by a society, and in the English society that is dictated by the College of Arms, which would have given you your coat of arms for your family. And this then gets replicated into a kingdom of Australia, where as towns and cities you would then hand your coats of arms up the chain, and that would be the call to arms that we were warned not to do in Kiskonan versus New South Wales 2021. No, what that meant was, don't go and be violent and incite violence and raise real guns. Return to your family house and your family's coat of arms and discover who you are in your line of authority, your ancestry that gives you a right with God before all of this person stuff even exists. And we can see that this dark emu is a source of Aboriginal lineage and heritage, whereas the College of Arms or the General Armoury of the United Kingdom of Australia would be your source. So you would have lineage going back through many armories, books into history that would define your family's lineage.
And with Gordon Reed's family, it's all based on his grandmother. She's a lovely lady. If you go on YouTube, she's a sweet little grandmother. I wouldn't mind her as a grandmother. And she comes from a very, not famous, but a really deeply colonial family. They go back 7 or 8 generations in Australia, and very easy to follow because all the records are there. They were convicts, settlers, there's all newspaper clippings, so that sort of stuff. So we were able to go back and trace every one of her ancestors.
So this is where we can see very clearly that your lineage is important here, and that it's easily recordable and findable to be provable. And in most cases this would be true. I'm not going to say this is true in all cases. Some people come to dead ends when they're looking through their family history because of relocation or diaspora or a whole bunch of things that would correlate to that. But in general, you would have a record in the College of Arms or your church, and that, as he said, there would be public record like newspaper clippings and all these sorts of things that go along with it.
Now, as I understand it, Dr. Gordon Reed's not claiming any Aboriginality from his father's side, so we didn't go, his mother's side, so we didn't go there. So he went to his father and his paternal grandmother, Robin Reed. So we've been down that tree, right? And there's no Aboriginality as far as we can find, because if there is, you find it. The newspaper reports start talking about Aboriginal people, or you'll find some sort of record or a criminal record or something like that. And there's nothing in that. And all her family go back to England, mainly, with a couple of Irish ancestors, 7 or 8 generations. So we're pretty confident, as far as we can see, that there's nothing there.
So we can see that this conspiracy goes further by actual ministers in the Parliament lying about their own heritage when they are in fact Australians under the Australian Imperial Crown, and their heritage does exist outside of this St Edward's Crown. But blatantly lying to the people while under an oath of allegiance and a duty to the Constitution to be honest and truthful and accountable in your duties kind of reflects very hard here in that certain people within that Parliament are conspiring against the Constitution very, very directly by lying about their very own lineage, which would reflect Kiskonan versus New South Wales 2021 and the lineage put down by myself on the court record.
Now, I don't know whether you've heard Gordon Reed in Parliament on Monday suggesting that we're taking his pride away from him. And why would we do this? Why does this work matter?
Taking his pride away. No, taking the mask off his face and showing the two-faced thing that he actually is when he can't define his very own bloodline, lineage and birthright claim. That's what it comes down to. His own birthright claim that he's concerned about while working in Parliament that's now sort of at the end of usufruct, and he's learning that he has to hand all the keys over to new monetary powers, new money masters in the house, that lots of these war criminals don't agree with. So they're scrambled to change the very Constitution, and they lie about their own heritage and lineage to that very constitutional document in the first place.
Well, it actually matters, Andrew, because especially in this year because of the voice, right? So if you're going to have special opportunities, jobs or voting rights through the voice for Aboriginal people, if we all vote that way.
Firstly, there is a lineage or line of authority to that legal document in the first place. A company, for instance, like Microsoft, can't claim to own the constitution of Amazon. This is the simplicity of the stupidity that is going on here. And when we talk about why this is important, we'll get to a legal fact, an actual court-defined legal fact that defines who owns what. Now, if you lie about your lineage, then this puts you directly, Pauline Hanson, if you're listening, which you should be, this puts you directly under that clause of jactitation. Lying about some sort of lineage or marriage or claim or ancestry, that's jactitation, isn't it? Isn't that illegal for a senator or minister to do in the Parliament?
The Australian public have to be 100% certain that the people that are sitting on the voice and voting and getting all the benefits really are Aboriginal. And in Australia, you've got the three-part rule. Now, Dr. Gordon Reid, he's proud to be Aboriginal because he self-identifies and other people recognise him as such. But that's not enough. That's only two parts. You need the third part, by law, that you have descent.
Clappy. Kisconan versus New South Wales 2021. You have to define, by law, a right of descent to a birthright in the Act of Settlement. And we could go on and on and on. The man just hit the nail on the head. Albo, what's your line of authority into the Constitution itself to be able to make changes to a document you administer rather than own? And then how do you allow an Aboriginal people to undermine a document at which they have no lineage to, Albo? No lineage to, Albo. You want to allow a people that have come into the Constitution to undermine a Constitution they technically have no lineage to, Albo, at which the same could be said for you and the curial power at which you ride on your horse for, Albo.
And so if he hasn't got descent, right, and he's saying he's Aboriginal, well, the whole thing's a farce. We might as well all just go home, right? Because then anyone could be Aboriginal. You know what I mean? So then you get people who say things like, well, the quickest way to close the gap, Andrew, is if everyone ticked the box next census and everyone became Aboriginal, closing the gap would go because we'd all be the same. But that defeats the purpose.
You'd all be grey for your WEF masters, wouldn't you, Albanese? Hey, Pauline, we don't want to be grey for our WEF masters. We found spirits with gods and lineage with our ancestors and a lawful right to our constitution. And we see criminals in the house. Albo's a criminal in the house. And Pauline, do you think we should put up with criminals in the house? A conspiracy in the house at law, Pauline? I told you, you're all fucked. There's no other way to look at it legally, Pauline. You have fucked up. At law, step left, step right, step straight ahead. It don't matter to anybody. You fucked yourselves already. You totally fucked yourselves already. And at law, what you've done is commit hangable offences to a document that you have no line of authority to in the very first. Kisconan versus New South Wales 2021. Very clearly defined on that court record. Who defined that line of authority, Pauline? Who defined that line of authority, Pauline? And that would become a criminal offence at law under Section 12 of the Crimes Act 1900 to now try and undermine the Constitution, Pauline, to now try and undermine the Constitution. Kisconan versus New South Wales 2021. I don't think even the people involved in this case realise what Justice Lonergan has actually done with the knowledge in my mind, Pauline. We've caught you the fuck out. We've caught you the fuck out. And at the end of the day, Pauline, there's only one solution for any of this, and that is walking to that noose and being hung from the neck until dead, or facing a jail cell for the determinable amount of years that these people decide you should go to jail for. And by these people, I mean people like Justice Lonergan, who have a full curial right and line of authority in their law, Pauline, in their law, Pauline, over and above you and your rule of law at which you are the ones that committed the heinous crimes against humanity.
And that's the trouble with all these people who aren't doing things properly, right? So it's not right. And it upsets a lot of Aboriginal people and a lot of non-Aboriginal people. And people are getting upset, right? And it's only going to cause divisions and problems. And then longer term, if for example, Gary Johns says, if you're going to have a race-based system in Australia, you have to be able to determine race. So Gary Johns, he doesn't really want it to happen, but he's saying, well, that means you've got to do DNA testing. And none of us really want to go down that path, but Gary Johns is 100% right. If you're going to give people benefits based on their DNA, you have to be able to determine the DNA.
Just to put viewers in the picture, Gary Johns, of course, is someone I've interviewed here. He is a former Labor minister and one of the leaders of the No campaign, suggesting, well, look, if you're going to have race-based benefits and a race-based politics, then you need to actually prove to people that you are of that race. Now, Roger Karge, you've done incredible work on your darkemuexposed.org website for years now, putting together, first it was fact-checking Bruce Pascoe's Dark Emu, of course, and you were about the first to actually establish that he wasn't telling the truth in his history. But you've also put together family trees for some time of people claiming to be Aboriginal, not just Bruce Pascoe, Professor Kerry Doyle, South Australian Attorney General Kyan Ma, Gordon Reid now, and others as well. How and why did all this start?
Well, it sort of starts because...
So this is important because you have all of these important people under oath of allegiance to a foreign curial power in this land trying to escape that curial power because they know at some point they did something wrong and the law is catching up with them. And they are trying to claim some sort of lineage that would escape them from the crimes that they have committed. And they've been called out at it. And the problem that we're going to find in a moment is what we see now with Lydia and this activist group, and what you will come to find is people like Rainforest Alliance have been using all of your children to fundraise money to buy your land from you and then exclude you from it. And this is a direct conspiracy against you as a people, being manipulated by what would be now defined as a communist power inside your government, seeking to undermine your line of authority and lineage to the very claims and birthright that you are as a people, so defined on Kiscona versus New South Wales 2021. And now you'll start to realise very, very clearly the importance of what I've done for the last 15 years, because I've realised that Australians really aren't awake to their own families and their fathers being the defenders of the faith of this very land and the upholders of the Constitution. And now we're being attacked, directly attacked from inside by a conspiracy at law that has been found out to be a communist agenda, an activist agenda that has sought to undermine the very people of the land itself. And that birthright defined in the Act of Settlement has upset their little plans somewhat a little bit, because we see them scrambling over the very criminal offences that they have committed. And this includes Peter Dutton of Home Affairs, the man that created a new organisation in this country to oversee the security of all of you. So this is a slavery and oversight manipulation department that has kept all of you in some sort of real world prison, so to speak.
I'm just a normal Australian. I tend to be a bit centre-right, but everyone, even my lefty friends, are getting worried about wokeism. And that's why we've got to draw a line in the sand, because our society is heading in a really weird place, right? And it's not just us old people, right? It's a lot of young people that are too scared to say anything. So old people like me, we don't care. I've got nothing to lose. So I can, because I'm taking a big risk sticking my neck out doing all this stuff, because we could be sued. But we make sure everything's right. We talk to the people, we give them opportunity to respond, and we haven't been sued yet, touch wood, haven't even got a concerns notice, which means we must be right. You can't just pretend to be something you're not and get away with it.
Yeah, well, the opposite happened to us, because we defined our real lineage to that constitution, and the state of New South Wales attacked us. Didn't you, Matthew Reason? Committing a war crime on a war memorial in that military attack, didn't you, Matthew Reason? After taking command of all states' police forces in an attack against a civilian population, remembering their dead at a war memorial. And that's the result of us standing up and defining this lie and the truth underneath it. Now, this becomes really important when lots of people start lying about their lineage and their heritage and they can't prove their birthright. And at law, this biblically becomes the you being thrust out of the kingdom because you're unable to define your very birthright. And this becomes a problem for Aboriginal people, given what Lydia has actually done to obfuscate any knowledge of their true birthright. It's not inside the Commonwealth of Australia Constitution, at which they seek to undermine on behalf of communist powers like Albo. And this is the stark reality here, is that Lydia has been used to undermine the Constitution instead of being afforded any help to self-determine as a tribal peoples. This is the stark reality that this man brings up in relation to lying about your very lineage, when at a legal level, Kiskanen versus New South Wales 2021, Stephen did define very clearly a lineage that goes back well before the Glorious Revolution 1688.
That's why.
Well, it's been going on for a long time now. How many people have you got working on this sort of stuff, on the genealogies, on fact-checking Bruce Pascoe's claims, on other people claiming they're Aborigine who are not?
Yeah, when I started, it was just me. I got really angry with Bruce Pascoe, especially young dark emu. So I just became a keyboard warrior by myself. And within a year or so, I had 30 people all around the country, all adding bits and pieces, writing it up. I edit the website. And since that time, other people have come on, and then we've got 3 really good genealogists, professionals, right? But they can't say who they are because they're scared. They're in the commercial field. They don't want to be associated, but they love doing this work because they're very honest, historical people, and they don't like it. And now, in the last year and a half, I got so many Aboriginal people just feeding me stuff, saying, look, check out this, look at this, right? So it's not just... We're not just doing it from an academic point of view. It's like a grassroots, real people. And I just give all those people a platform, right? So, it costs a lot of money. It's thousands of dollars. But by putting it out there, it sort of gives you a bit of relief that at least someone or some group is trying to do something about all this, trying to be a bit sensible and rational. Because I'm only looking at the really famous people. For every one of these people, there's 10 at a much lower level who I won't chase because there's too much work, but they're in your local council. They're in your local group that's trying to get a claim over a particular development site. And they're all...
So right this very second, Pauline, the Redlands Council is trying to give away 3,500 lots of land to an Aboriginal mob that is seeking to undermine the Constitution. But at a state level, Pauline, they've made claims for something under some legislation that's allowed them to make these claims in the first place, while being set up as corporations to make these claims instead of birthright lineages and proof of claim of a certain region of land that existed prior to 1966. It would have been recognised by the Great Fleet 1908, Pauline. Recognised by the Great Fleet 1908 as their tribal territory, Pauline, as their tribal territory. And here you are trying to obfuscate the Commonwealth of Australia Constitution and not recognise their tribal territory, which you took off them in 1967, Pauline, took off them in 1967. And now you seek to undermine towns and cities that did not belong to them on behalf of them. No, you're using them on behalf of a conspiracy inside that parliament already proven, Pauline, already proven, Pauline.
Fakes, hundreds of them, hundreds.
Well, you say hundreds. I mean, we've had some Aboriginal activists say up to 300,000. I think it's probably less than that, but I wouldn't mind betting it's around the 100,000, 150,000 mark based on census stats, as I've said earlier at the top of the show. How many people you think are out there that say they're Aboriginal and not?
I think Susan Ingram, she's saying 300,000. That's a big number. She and I spoke to her. She says that's sort of a scholar's gut feel, right? But I think it's at least 100, 150. And now some of those people are genuine. They're perhaps a bit like Dr. Gordon Reed's grandmother. I think she probably really believes she's Aboriginal, but they haven't done the work.
Haven't done the work to prove it. So just gave them Aboriginal corporations and then started feeding them grant money to buy land and put it into Aboriginal corporations and then organise deeds of land trust so that they're not land titles. They're in trust with corporations so that they're in perpetuum for a people as beneficiaries of a corporation. This is the scam that was set up, and there are Aboriginal freehold titles all across this country that fall under this very scam. And Elbow and all of those people you see scrambling around in front of you right now are the ones that are responsible for trying to undermine the very land of the Commonwealth of Australia instead of, and here's the key point I make, instead of recognise their sovereign tribal rights as per the Great White Fleet 1908, recognising their lands and a peace between white Australia and black Australia. And that's what's been undermined here by all of this lies and all of these Aboriginal corporations and all of this undermining of you by people like Elbow. And not just Elbow. Elbow's just the figurehead. He's the ornament on the front of the car at the moment.
To prove it, right? So there's a lot of people of goodwill that want to be Aboriginal and they just tick the box, but they don't realise that has consequences. But I'm saying there's probably hundreds, maybe a few thousand who are nefarious. They're out there to rig the system and do all these dodgy deals. They're the ones we've really got to worry about, right? They're the ones who want to become rent seekers and make money out of it. The average
reparations treaty, make money out of it. Give me $1 billion in gold into my personal bank account. Wow, always was. Lydia, undermining the parliament, fist bumping the oath. That there's so many things here that correlate to what he's just said in relation to trying to undermine a process just for financial and monetary gain, wherein a WEF partner don't give a shit. They're going to expect you all to pay it back together. And if these people just keep taking the grants and taking the grants and taking the grants and taking the grants, and they don't have a line of authority to do so, they have committed a fraud. And if they proclaim to be of marriage and lineage, then they have committed the crime of jactitation inside the very parliament, which is a crime set out in annotated constitution by Quick and Garron. Therefore, disallowing them to sit on the floor of the parliament in the first place under section 44. This is kind of amusing that it comes full circle that the delusion and the deluded are the ones that are actually sitting in the parliament instead of us sitting on the outside looking in at this clown show.
Each little grandma who wants to tick the box and feel nice is not such a threat, right? But I think there's probably 100, 150,000 like you, but there's a few hundreds, a few thousand who are actually bad apples. They're the ones you got to watch.
No. I think you make a right distinction there. I don't hold any grudge against Gordon Reed's grandmother. I'm sure she genuinely believes that she is Aboriginal, but like you say, probably hasn't quite done the work. And the same as Kaya Ma's mother. I thought she seemed to genuinely believe it. It just the records don't back her up. Roger Karge, your research has been absolutely fascinating. I think you're helping to change the political discussion, and let's see what follows from your latest discoveries. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Andrew.
So here we talk about the importance of lineage in a voice to Parliament, and that now extends to a lineage in the Constitution itself, God, King and Country, and a reliance on the blessing of Almighty God to be able to hold that line of authority. And we see very clearly that these ministers and senators and politicians of all different levels are proclaiming something that they can't proclaim at law. And this makes them lunatics, that they're unable to define their own family, let alone where home is. And this puts the delusion and the mirror back on the very ministers that make these proclamations in the very first place, that sit in a parliament under oath that has a lineage in itself. And that's the very key problem here that they fail to address when this gets to a courtroom. That they're allowing Aboriginal corporations to take land without proof of lineage, without proof of any heritage, and then they're allowing the states to change a line of authority in the very state itself, to even allow new heritage cultural laws to replace what heritage laws already exist within the state. This is the removal of a people from the Constitution at which their forefathers forged and founded. And I don't think when the people realise the conspiracy that's actually going on in the Parliament, they're going to allow this foreign curial power to undermine the very thing that their forefathers forged and laid down so that they could live by it, and let alone be administered by foreign curial powers since 1967 and earlier. It is still the people's document, and it's up to the people by their will to just walk away from a St Edward's crown and be done with the war criminals on the stage, and somewhat recognise that sympathising with an enemy was already defined in the Enemies Act 1947, I think, at which this entire power that was encroaching upon you was defined at law. So the biblical sense that you've been serving a foreign master and that Matthew 6:24 applies, and this kind of brings to relevance Luke 15:14 to 15, in that you became a citizen of a foreign power in your own very land, and it's this recognition of lineage. And I ask the Prime Minister to walk into the Hall of Memory in the Canberra War Memorial and just gaze upon the 12 standing upright on the wall and look at the panes of glass and see the word heritage or see the word ancestry in the glasswork there. I would also ask the Prime Minister to go and look at all of the red and white crosses that are on the wall in the columns there. And I would ask the Prime Minister to gaze upon the military men that would look down upon this stone of the unknown soldier. I would ask the Prime Minister to raise his head and look up high, look up on high, and then go and read Kiskanen versus New South Wales 2021, and let's argue about this lineage and your right to change a document at law, Mr Albanese, by declaring referendum and then trying to undermine that referendum at law, which is a criminal offence, Mr Albanese, having not defined very specifically at law the specific word change you wish to make to our document in line of authority to our ancestors, so shown to you in Shrine of Remembrance in the King's Domain, linked by Prince's Highway to that very war memorial in Canberra, where you can gaze upon the stone of the unknown soldier. You might then think, would he be known by now on some sort of court record